All right. Welcome to the 2 Cents Podcast with Jay Richardson. I'm your host, me, and I'm really excited about today's episode. A lot to get into, as always, but this particular episode, we're going to get into some different aspects of the sports sphere. The sports universe has a lot of different components to it and different players in play now, and it always seems to cross over with the entertainment sphere because all sports is entertainment in this country, and that's what we both love and sometimes hate about it. But there's a few things we have to address first. In our previous podcast, we discussed the Rich Paul rule, the NCAA basically ruling that not only do you have to adhere to a few set of standardized tests and some other things if you want to become an agent that a young person before they leave early for the NBA draft can basically work with to do kind of like a sneak preview of where their draft status would be before they decide to stay or leave. But also you have to have a 4-year degree, which was something that was never the case up until little known, Ohio guy named Rich Paul, who was just happened to be friends with LeBron James and just happened to basically co-found a sports entertainment representation empire that they're now building, where they have some of the top clients in the NBA. Well, this guy comes from a background, we'll just call it underprivileged, where he didn't have an opportunity to get a 4-year degree. Heck, I know kids who come from very nice, well-to-do middle-class backgrounds who can't afford a 4-year degree. That's not an uncommon situation. NCAA put this rule in place. A lot of people thought specifically to, keep down and maybe hamstring a specific demographic, right? And Rich Paul brought attention to that. LeBron James and all of his clout brought attention to that. And lo and behold, maybe a week later, NCAA amends the quote-unquote Rich Paul rule. They basically said, hey, our bad. This looked really bad. We get it. So we're gonna take it back. We don't want it anymore. You don't need to have a 4-year degree. You just need to be in good standings with the NBA Players Association, and boom, the rule is now done, kaput. But I guess my question would be, why did it take such intense backlash for the NCAA and the leaders at the top of that organization to look at it and go, this isn't very fair. This is not, because everything, when you talk about laws and rules, legislation, it's always the spirit of the rule, right? It's never the rule itself, but the spirit behind it. What was this rule truly intended to do? So when you look at, basic laws, jaywalking, you see people get stupid tickets for jaywalking and they get mad. And you're right, it's not always an applicable law, right? But it's always about the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law was to prevent pedestrians from getting hit by oncoming traffic. Yet when there's times where there's no traffic and, someone who's in law enforcement just kind of wants to be a you-know-what, then they give this guy, crossing the street a jaywalking citation, maybe because, there was something else they were going after. Someone would argue that's against the spirit of the rule. That's what I'm trying to discuss here. You put this rule in place, you want guys to have 4-year degrees to become, an agent or a representative of these young people. What's the spirit of that rule? I mean, are you truly concerned about the competency of these agents, or did you just want to make sure specific types of human beings are less likely to get this opportunity? Because that's, to me, the spirit of the rule. And I think the NCAA quickly looked at that, quickly rectified that situation, as they should have, but it should have never have come to this, and that's the problem. I think we really have to start looking at why, these major organizations do what they do and why it takes us so long to catch up to what they're trying to do. And yeah, sure, change comes, but it's always slow. This happened fast because there was such a backlash. Had there not been, though, this rule would have stayed in place. So I think it's a sign of progress. I think it's a sign of the quote-unquote woke crowd starting to really flex the muscle and say, hey, listen, when something happens, we're no longer going to let it happen and stay quiet. We're going to speak up and put pressure on these organizations to make changes. And this time it worked, and I'm thankful for it. Speaking of major organizations and speaking of changes, we've really got to discuss something that I want to spend a little bit more time on. We all are very familiar with Colin Kaepernick. We're all very familiar with his kneeling over the past, 3 to 4 years and the impact that his protest during games had on not just the NBA, but politics, the culture, sports world, and really America. The entire country was had some sort of opinion about this man, Colin Kaepernick, had some sort of thoughts and opinions about kneeling, and this became a very divisive, very intense political moment, actually, which started off as just a football game and just a guy saying, hey, look, I think there's some things going wrong in this country, and I kind of want to bring some attention to that. A couple years later, he's out of the league. He doesn't have his job. Next thing you know, things intensify. Other guys protest. We all know the story. And here we are today. Jay-Z is meeting with Roger Goodell. Why is Jay-Z meeting with Roger Goodell? Well, he's meeting initially to discuss the Super Bowl halftime and discuss, some changes that need to be made that would, I think, push the halftime forward. Obviously, we all know the last few halftimes of Super Bowl, the numbers were down. Everyone's argued about the idea that you had the Super Bowl in Atlanta, and then your acts were not Atlanta-based acts. They were not, obviously not hip-hop acts, and obviously not acts that the people wanted to see because no one watched. So Jay-Z thought, hey, here's a great idea. Here's a great time for me to kind of, insert my brand and insert, some of my knowledge in a purely in a consultation role to the NFL. Now, a lot of people had an issue, not so much with Jay-Z consulting with the NFL, but just the optics of seeing Jay-Z side by side with Roger Goodell being, the commissioner of the NFL, the head honcho, the guy that all the owners pay $40 million a year to basically, I don't even know, I would say, run the PR of the NFL, but he doesn't do a very good job at that because it's always a PR nightmare. Everything that the NFL has happened to it from a PR standpoint is almost always bad. And yet this league continues to thrive, which, being a former NFL player myself, I'm okay with because my pension's tied to it. But what I'll say is, when you really watch Roger Goodell in the last handful of years, and I know this is not always going to be a popular statement, but I can see a little bit of progress in Raj. Starting off very heavy-handed, always over-punishing guys, always wanting to make some sort of statement, and now starting to have some balance to him, starting to kind of see the other side, so to speak. Well, Jay-Z represents the other side, and you're seeing two guys meet and come together to discuss what on the surface looks like, Super Bowl halftime show and maybe a few other things in the entertainment sphere. But no, they're really discussing the culture of what's going on in the NFL, how the NFL can further ingratiate itself with different demographics in this country, and the big elephant in the room, which I was glad to see Jay-Z address right away, which is Colin Kaepernick, the protests and social injustice, what to do about it. So you got all these people who reacted just to the optics right away and said, oh, see, Jay-Z, all about his money. There you go again. All I see is two rich guys in a room meeting about money. They're not even trying to, do anything for the cause. Dang, Jay didn't even clear it with Cap. This is crazy. Let me kind of address that right now. First of all, Jay-Z's a billionaire. So it's not a situation where Jay-Z's going to, Roger Goodell like he wants or needs anything from Roger Goodell or the NFL. Jay-Z's brand stands on its own. We all know that. What he's been able to build at to me, the young age of, what was Jay-Z, 50 maybe, if that's pretty amazing. So I don't think this is just a money play because everyone wants to make it seem like he needs money. Jay-Z does not need any money from the NFL. Jay-Z never got a check from the NFL. Jay-Z will be just fine. Jay-Z's always been an agent of progress and change. We've seen this with how he shifted, just the image of a hip-hop artist and that paradigm, and just how he shifted it and turned it into something of, you can be a hip-hop artist and you can still be a family man, you can still have a wife and kids, you can still pursue business interests, you can still build your brand and become something bigger than just somebody with a microphone yelling at a crowd. And to me, that's always been such an important thing for young people to see. So I've always had a lot of respect for Jay, not just because we have the same name, but because, and I guess his real name is Sean, but whatever. The point is, I've always had a lot of respect for how he's moved, and I've always had a lot of respect for what he's tried to stand for, which is progress and which is evolution. So we come here today, and now we're seeing, these reports, and Jay-Z's trying to, or has to, for whatever reason, defend the situation he's in, where he's trying to consult with the NFL, and people have an issue with that. I don't know why anyone has an issue with it, but for those that do, I think it stems from the idea that some truly think Jay-Z going and meeting with the NFL is going behind Colin Kaepernick's back, which doesn't make any sense to me, or that it's, purely about money, or that it's somehow sabotaging our pretend fake woke culture. Let me explain something to people first and foremost. Colin Kaepernick is not the gatekeeper of the woke movement. So Jay-Z doesn't have to go to Colin to get permission to work with the NFL. Like, one, that's not the case, and two, it's not even necessary. I think what people need to understand is that there's always something bigger happening, yes, but Colin Kaepernick did what he did to draw attention to a specific situation. That situation now has attention drawn to it. So for Colin Kaepernick, mission accomplished. And oh, by the way, since we're, feeling like, because I've been reading comments and people saying things like, until Cap has a job, how Jay gonna work with the NFL? The goal, as Jay put when he, kind of discussed it, was the goal was never to get Colin Kaepernick a job in the NFL. I'm not even sure, this is me personally, I'm not even sure Colin Kaepernick wants a job in the NFL. There were reports a year ago that he was offered a chance to come into camp with the Denver Broncos, and I think two other franchises, one being the Miami Dolphins, just because of the system they were running at the time. Tannehill, Kaepernick, not that much of a difference in style of QB. I think that would have made sense for him. He turned them down, and some will say, oh, well, those were just fake offers. They didn't really want him in there. They were probably going to cut him anyway. The point is, the offers were out there. Those were legitimized as offers to come and, be on the roster going into training camp. Now, was that a PR move by the NFL just to say, hey, look, we gave him a shot? I don't know, but I know this. Cap's done way better off the football field than he ever probably would have done as a backup quarterback for the 49ers and or the Miami Dolphins, and here's why. When you build a brand like he's built, and you built that brand on being something of a rebel, something of a catalyst for change, and then eventually a martyr, you've got an amazing, almost cult-like following. And I don't want to use the word cult because it becomes a negative connotation there. But, I mean, you have dedicated, devoted following. And that's big. So much so that Nike was able to build an entire campaign around it. So now you're making more money with Nike than you ever would have made, I believe, as a quarterback in the NFL. And oh, by the way, the NFL did settle with Colin Kaepernick for an undisclosed amount that some have speculated is in the upwards of $70 million. So I say all that to say, let's stop crying tears for Colin Kaepernick and how he needs a job in the NFL. He doesn't need a job with anybody. So now that that's off the table, let's get back to the real issue. The real issue is social change, and Jay-Z put it just like this. The man kneeled for change, or the man kneeled to bring awareness to social injustices and, reform, right? Okay, awareness was brought. People were very aware of why he was kneeling. So the why is now that box is checked. Now the next box is the what. What are we going to do about it? What's the next step? What's the next move? And I love how Jay put it, and now it's time to get into the actionable items. And that's a quote. And I love that quote because it's true. How do we take action? What are the steps the NFL needs to take? What do we expect the NFL to do about social justice? The NFL is an entertainment organization. I'm not sure what people expect the NFL to overnight do with the Supreme Court or in Congress or with the Senate. That's not really their role. However, I do agree that the NFL does have an extremely powerful platform in this country, and it is the preeminent sports. It runs the sports world over basketball, baseball, to everything else, right? So I mean, it is America's pastime for the last probably 20 years running. So I understand when people say with all the power the NFL has, they could do more. I agree, and I guess what Jay-Z and Roger Goodell are meeting to discuss is, okay, what does doing more look like? So for all those that wanted to, take this meeting as, or the optics of this meeting, I should say, as some sort of betrayal of Colin Kaepernick. It's way bigger than that, y'all. You got to let that go. Cap's doing just fine. Cap's living his best life. Now, let's get to the part where we actually decide what change looks like. Now, speaking of change, Dak Prescott is trying to get his change, okay? He wants to get his chips north. He's trying to get his dollars up. And the Cowboys, they're a little bit reluctant to give him what he wants. Now, we discussed a little bit of the Dak Prescott thing, and I don't want to get too much into it, but I do want to say this. Everyone who has an issue with what Dak is asking for, and some of the reports early on were that he wanted $40 million, turns out those are false reports. He never asked for $40 million. What he did ask for is the higher tier of fair market value for what the quarterback's value will be a year or two from now, which will be in between 30 and 40 million. I mean, quarterbacks are making 25, 30 million right now a year, the top tier guys. Well, 2 years from now, we understand inflation, we understand economics, we understand the salary cap in the NFL. That's going to be about 30 to 40 million a year. It's just what's coming. We all see the writing on the wall. You're going to see guys re-ing up and getting these ridiculous contracts. Aaron Rodgers will get one more massive one before he retires, and it'll be huge, especially if he plays well these next 2 years. All Dak's saying is, I want to position myself to be somewhere in the mix. And for a guy that's won as many games as he's won in his first few years in the NFL and shown some progress, no, he's not in the top 5 of quarterbacks. No, he's not on Rodgers, Brady, or Breeze's level. We understand that. But he does want to be paid like a top 10 to 12 quarterback. And why shouldn't he be? When you look at that top 10 to 12, when it comes to money and dollars, you see a lot of names in there. You see Matt Stafford's in there, and you see Andy Dalton's in there, and you see all of these guys who Dak's won more games than, and a lot of people would say has played better than. So why on earth is he unjustified in asking for similar money or more? That makes perfect sense. Ask and you shall receive. And if you don't ask for it, you're certainly not going to have a chance at getting it. So I have no problem with Dak wanting $34 million, even if the Cowboys and him eventually settle on 31 or 30 or 28. Hey, you got to shoot your shot. I respect it. I completely understand it. But like I said, when you're paying guys the kind of money that you're paying them at that QB position, because it's never a money versus value, right? With that position. With that position, it's just the value of the position. It's not so much the value of the player. It's the QB position is valued a certain way, and so those guys will get paid a certain way, even if it's unjustified. Jay Cutler got $10 million last year, I think, from the Miami Dolphins, and that guy, smoked cigarettes during commercial breaks. I'm convinced of it. So I don't want to hear that, Dak's asking for too much. He's not. I'd ask for 50 if I was Dak, and if we settle on 35, I'll take it. But that's how the game works. That's how negotiations work. Everyone should understand that, and that's just where we are. I think people need to understand about the game of football in general is it's very different than it was in 2000 and the 90s. The football and entertainment worlds have merged to the point where everyone is trying to find the biggest value on their roster when it comes to putting butts in seats and getting eyes to the television. And I think that's lost on a lot of fan bases. I learned this, and this will be maybe a separate podcast, but I'm going to discuss it. I learned this when I played for the New York Jets in 2012. I learned that this is more than a sport. It's not about winning. It's about selling tickets. It's about getting viewers. It's about growing brands. So everyone that, hates on the Cowboys, I hate on the Cowboys, I'll be honest. They have the most annoying fan base in the world. Why? Y'all haven't won anything in over 2 decades, and yet if you didn't know any better, you'd think that the Cowboys were the most popular team on planet Earth. And they're just not that good. Haven't been since I was a little kid. Yet, what are they doing well? Jerry Jones has maximized that brand. They are the highest evaluated franchise in pro football, meaning they bring in the most dollars. Why? Marketing, storylines, and also merchandise. People love that star. That thing is purchased everywhere. It's almost, become a parallel with like being American. It's like, the star. It was such a beautiful concept years ago whenever that team or franchise began. Jerry to slap a star on that helmet. Brilliant move. People in this country, we love the stars, we love the stripes, we love all that stuff. They represent everything. It's apple pie, it's baseball, even though it's football, it's the Cowboys. And that's why they've been able to do so well when it comes to their brand. And I think what people need to realize is the same reason the Cowboys are dominating is the same reason why Antonio Bryant is in Oakland. Oakland Raiders were in a situation where their brand was starting to suffer a little bit, and I think Antonio Brown was someone that the Raiders needed. I know this is going to sound interesting, and I know this is a little bit off topic, but we're discussing sports and we're also discussing entertainment, and I think people need to understand this. The Raiders, specifically because there are moments from making a shift into a whole different market in Las Vegas, they need to be able to get eyes on product. They need to be able to get a popularity boost, right? They wanna not just have a good season, but they want to be popular. And in order to be popular, you need someone that's going to make people show up. I don't know that tons of people are going to show up for their quarterback, David Carr. I don't know that he's not a flashy guy, and also he didn't put up the kind of numbers where he's just eye-popping and it's must-see TV. They don't have a big-time, running back anymore. You don't have Beast Mode, who had a little bit of star power, but you don't have that guy in that locker room. You just traded away your best player last season in Khalil Mack, who people may have showed up for, but most defensive players still don't have the kind of pop and pizzazz that a top-tier, drama-filled, popular offensive player does, right? Because you look at Aaron Donald with the LA Rams, to me he's the best player in the NFL, obviously the best defensive player, and even he doesn't put butts in seats the way a big-time, loudmouth receiver will. And that is why Antonio Brown is right now with the Oakland Raiders. And that is also why John Gruden, who's been notoriously, as a coach, historically always very vicious, very hard on his players, very tough-minded, which I don't mind. But with Antonio Brown, he's so lenient, so calm, so on his side. Why is that? Because you need AB, baby. Love him or hate him, is he the drama king? Absolutely. Is he the quintessential, prima donna wide receiver diva on a higher level than even Keyshawn Johnson? Absolutely. But will people tune in, love or hate him? Will they tune in to watch him sink or swim this season? Absolutely. Hard Knocks will be lit. This whole season for the Raiders is going to be lit just because AB is there and just because people want to watch. And that is what they purchased when they got him. Not just the numbers, not just the catches, not just the touchdowns. They purchased the entertainment factor. That value, it brings everything you need. And once again, I'm going to refer back to 2012 when I played for the Jets. I learned it in a very smaller situation where I watched us keep Tim Tebow on that roster. And when I saw that, I thought, well, that's strange. We already have 3 quarterbacks on the roster, including Sanchez and a few other guys who I thought were all better than Tim, specifically at quarterback. Why did we keep Tim? I didn't understand. It's not a knock on Tim Tebow. I met Tim. Obviously, we were teammates. Nothing but a nice guy. But if I can be frank, he couldn't throw a football. He struggled. It wasn't his skill. It wasn't his gift. As some of my close friends say in their business, throwing a football wasn't his ministry. That just wasn't what he was put here to do. So I don't understand why he was on the team as a quarterback. And then I looked at different numbers. I looked at jersey sales. I looked at Twitter followers. I looked at, season ticket numbers. And I said, oh, this dude has 12 plus million Twitter followers. This dude just sold, the 3rd highest selling jersey in the league, and he's a 4th string quarterback. It was the popularity. He brought something different. It was an investment. If you're Woody Johnson from the Johnson & Johnson family and you own the Jets and you want to make money, not win games, you want to bring in guys that are going to put eyes on your product and going to put money in your pocket. Well, if I know I can invest, because I think Tim, was on that team. I think his contract was maybe 1.3. You mean to tell me I can invest $1.3 million and I can do 20, 30 million in jersey sales in a 3 or 4 month span? Oh yeah. Even if you're splitting, 60% of that with the NFL, you're still doing fantastic. So, very simple investment, and not to get into, money and marketing strategies, but I'll say I get it after that. And Antonio Brown, very, very, very similar situation. All right, folks, I want to discuss something really cool that I got to do earlier on this week. I'm in Columbus, Ohio, for those of you who do not know, and every year we have this fantastic celebrity golf tournament sponsored by Nationwide Children's Hospital, hosted by the wonderful Clark Kellogg, former Ohio State great NBA basketball player, college basketball player, and also CBS analyst. And he always has one of his CBS analyst buddies come and join in the festivities and golf with us, and his name is Sir Charles Barkley from TNT, none other than. So Sir Charles comes every year, has a blast. The dude is one of the most straight-up guys you'll ever meet. For anyone who's ever met Chuck, I've met him, got a chance to hang out with him about 3 years in a row now at this tournament. He's always a classy guy. He's always treats everyone so, I don't know how to put it, like he knows you. He's just a regular Joe, which I love about him. He's laid back. He'll give you exactly what he thinks. He ain't gonna BS you. He's not gonna give you TV talk. I'll give you TV talk sometimes in public. He ain't gonna do that. Charles keeps it 100, as they say, and I love that about Charles. So I happened to walk into the country club after getting fitted for a golf shirt because I wore terrible golf clothes there, and anyone who saw my Instagram will see that it was pretty embarrassing. I don't really have golf clothes. I don't golf very often, so when I show up, hour before I showed up, I realized, oh crap, I got to put on stuff that will look decent in a golf course. All I had on was some old shorts and a t-shirt and some running shoes that I don't even wear, but I just knew I couldn't wear Jordans to the golf course. That's not gonna look cool. I mean, I love my fresh, Jordan 1s, but I can't wear those on a golf course. That's not the look, and I don't want to blend in. So when I got there, they gave me a golf shirt that I changed into just so I could look appropriate, and I ended up looking ridiculous, whatever. I'm in the lunch room. We're having lunch. I just happen to sit down at my table, and then boom, Chuck walks in, sits down right next to me, and it was kind of funny. I think I know why. For those of you who've never been to a country club or a golf course, I'm just gonna be frank, you're not gonna see tons of black guys. So here's my African American self sitting at the table, and I think Chuck looked over and just said, you know what, I'm gonna go sit with him, which I appreciated because I understand that feeling, Chuck. And I just thought to myself, let's sit down and chat a little bit. I didn't want to pressure Chuck and start asking him all these basketball questions like I wanted to, but I certainly started the conversation, and then Charles dropped a little something on me. He said to me he had some concern. He had some serious concerns about a player who everyone is excited about, and I know exactly who he meant, and I want to tell you guys exactly who he meant. There's a player coming into the league right now, first overall pick in the draft. He's got more hype than maybe any incoming draft pick, probably since LeBron James. Blake Griffin, maybe, I don't know, right in that area. And his name is Zion Williamson. We all know the name. And we all have these lofty expectations based on his collegiate exploits and even high school exploits, what he was doing to guys, his athleticism. And I wanted to talk to Chuck about the Lakers versus the Clippers, and I wanted to talk about LeBron. And Charles said, oh, man, listen, Kawhi is going to be on a minutes restriction. He ain't going to play a whole lot this season, not to the playoffs. And LeBron, he's going to be on minutes restriction too. And LeBron's getting a little older, and I think Father Time's going to kind of creep up on him, and he's going to find out a little bit about what it's like to play at that age. And I thought that was just all interesting takes. But more importantly, he shifted the conversation right away. He said, you know what I'm worried about? I said, what's that? He said, that boy Zion. And I said, oh my goodness, really? I said, what exactly worries you? And he goes, Jay, I'm gonna tell you this. He goes, the boy too big and he can't shoot. And he goes, that's not a good combination in today's NBA. And what Chuck was saying was something that, not to sound like, I know what I'm talking about, although I kind of do. I kind of said that after the Summer League and even in the NBA draft, and even when I really got a closer up look at Zion, I said, man, the guy's a specimen. super athletic, a really great kid too, and loves the game, and I love everything I see out of him. I said, but when it comes to the NBA game, I am so curious to see how his game is going to translate. And Charles saying what he said, it just resonated. He basically said, look, in today's NBA, 5-on-5, positionless basketball, you can switch everything. Everyone's got to be able to guard everyone. And you have got to be able to space the floor with shooting. And you've got to be able to handle the ball, be a triple threat. You have a kid who's 280 pounds, but he's not a 7-footer, and he doesn't shoot like a guard, and yet he can't really handle the ball like a wing. I'm not sure where he fits unless you're on a team that's just running the entire time, which, New Orleans might have to do. He said, I just don't know where he's going to fit because those boys in the middle, they're going to be 6'10" and up. They're all going to be athletic. They're going to be able to rebound. And, yeah, he'll get some rebounds because he's a big body. He's explosive. He said, but in the fourth quarter, when those legs get tired, those 6'10" guys will still be 6'10". And that is a very, very good point. And I think it's going to be something to really watch this fall, to see Zion's progression, to see if he can develop a jump shot, and to see if, as Charles said, who has been known to have, weight issues in his past. He said, as a big guy, I know this kid's gonna struggle with his weight, and in that city. And I'm just gonna say, as somebody that my last year in the NFL played for the New Orleans Saints, I moved down to that city, and within the first 14 days, I gained 8 pounds. It's the food, man. It's so damn good. And everything's, cooked with heavy cream and dressings, and there's all kind of extra stuff, and half of it's fried. Anyway, I think the plate they bring you is fried. And you almost eat that too. It's just so good. And you're going to put on weight. And Zion could be 300, by December if you don't really pay attention. So I hope that staff has a nutritionist ready, and I hope they hire, Chris Brinkley, something, one of them Instagram guys I've seen coaching shooters. Get one of them guys and get him right, because in order for him to be the kind of athlete and the kind of NBA player, I should say, that the league is going to need him to be, purely just for the marketing of that brand down there in that small market in New Orleans, he is going to have an instant impact. In order to do that, you got to be able to shoot, baby, and you got to show up, be the first pick. So I hope he does well, because I like the kid. I just like his attitude, and I just really, really, really want him to do well. But in order for him to do well, he's going to have to, check a few of those boxes. So we shall see. Before I get out of here, I got to give a quick shout out to a few people, actually. Not just Russell Wilson and Sierra Wilson, I guess it is now, since they're married. I love the fact that they are now part of the ownership group with the Seattle Sounders. I think that's important for a lot of reasons. Obviously they're not Seattle natives, but as an athlete, I love to see athletes getting more and more involved in ownership, and you're going to see it. Started with Jordan to me and Magic, and obviously LeBron one day will be on that list. And he already is on the ownership for a couple of soccer clubs and some other franchises, which I love. But I just like to see athletes slowly starting to infiltrate that executive and that ownership area of the sports and business world, because it's so important that we have voices in that world that represent the people who are on that field. It'd be like a guy owning a construction company that's never worked construction. It's always difficult to see. You want someone who has some sort of background in that industry, have some sort of piece of ownership, someone who understands what the players, or what I should say the employees, are going through. That's all we are as players, as employees. We're no different than you, and I think that's important. There's a lot of other athletes that are part of Major League Soccer ownership groups, including Steve Nash, former NBA player, including Mia Hamm. You got Magic Johnson. You got Nomar Garciaparra. Obviously, you got Russ and Sierra. Finding out also that James Harden has a 5% stake, in the Houston Dash and a few others. So I think, he got $220 million. You better have a stake in something other than just State Farm. But I think that's really, really cool to see athletes get involved in ownership. Shout out to all of them. It's, once again, pushing not just, the sports culture forward, but pushing the blue collar workers forward. And when I say blue collar workers, I mean anyone that is an employee, because unless you are an owner, you're probably an employee. And I love to see, the power slowly going to the people. And even though these people are millionaires and multimillionaires, they're still a part of, quote unquote, the people because of how they got their start. And I enjoy seeing that. Once again, I'm Jay Richardson. This has been the 2 Cents Podcast. I'm so happy that you guys are continuing to tune in. Please like, subscribe, share. You can tweet me. I'm at Jay Richardson 99. That's Jay Richardson 99. And please follow us on Instagram at the 2 Cents Show. That's the number 2 Cents Show, because we really want to build our following. We really want to build our community, and we want to build a beautiful online community where we're going to be sharing ideas. I want you guys to give me feedback. I want you guys to DM me on IG and say, hey, Jay, this is something that you missed. Please discuss this. Or, hey, I like what you said. Any feedback is good feedback. It's how we grow. It's how we get better. We all need it. This is only going to continue and get better and bigger, and I want everyone to be a part of it. Thank you so much. Have a good one.